So I am going to describe this book to you guys. The title is Do Not Leave Quietly. Excuse me. The title in itself kind of got my attention. It's probably a little bit suitable to my personality. But it also, the foreword is written by a guy named Dr. Lance Wallnow, who I talked about this a long time ago, like 5 years ago, before we had the process. The title of this is How to Stop Half Your Warfare in Less Than a Minute. And it's a whole nother teaching that I'll probably do again because it's really valuable, but I don't want to spend a bunch of time on that tonight. I want to start with a little bit of trivia. Does anybody know, and probably the kids will be more likely to know this than the adults, how old were our founding fathers when they signed the documents that started this country? Does anybody have a guess? One of them. Okay, so the information that I came up with, 1776 is a year. James Monroe was 18. Aaron Burr was 20. John Marshall was 20. Alexander Hamilton, 21. James Madison, 25. Benjamin Rush, 30. John Jay, 30. Thomas Jefferson, 33. And Thomas Paine, 39. I think that we tend to think of, because of today's events, that every politician or everybody involved in government is self-interested and has financial profit. You know, we have just a different view nowadays because of the world we live in. These were young men fighting tyranny. They were not career politicians. They were outlaws. They were angry extremists who refused to quietly submit to oppressive rule in their lives. One of the quotes from them says, "When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty," which is the perfect segue to this book, okay? So I'm going to do a fair amount of reading out of this because I can't say it better than it's already said, okay? So it starts by, this is the intro. One day within the next 5 years, and the copyright of this book is 2022, okay? One day within the next 5 years, something shocking will happen in America. It will not be a war or a terrorist attack. It will not be a natural or an economic disaster. Instead, it will be a revealing. On that day, wokeness, socialism, progressivism will suddenly be revealed. Their true intentions will be known as they rip off their mask and openly declare war on the church and the Bible. Marxists could not come clean about this all at once. America had to be made ready to burn Bibles and arrest Christians, but we are almost there. And maybe you have heard that 29% of Democrats now believe the unvaccinated should be placed in concentration camps. It will be a very small step to program them to hate believers in the same way they hate their fellow citizens. The left must consider the Bible the most powerful book in the world. Look at all they felt they had to wreck before targeting the Holy Scriptures. They had to damage, and stop and think about these things. And I know that I'm straying into a political realm, but you can't look at what's going on in the world today and as a Christian not be involved. You can't. If you're honest with yourself and if you have any understanding of what the Bible says, you can't look at what's going on and pretend God is not offended. He's greatly offended. So anyway, the left had to damage marriage, family, gender, citizenship, economy, race relations, education, freedom of speech, and medical rights. Only then have they done enough damage and created enough fires out there that then they can take on the Bible. So the next thing he says is, I see something else on the horizon. I see a vast moral awakening. It's powerful enough to reverse the damage of 40 years of Marxist planning. It has the potential to restore morality, common sense, and fear of God. We are at an inescapable fork in the road. We must choose the Christianity that forged American freedom or be cast into the black hole of Marxism. If we leave quietly, there is no hope. So what matters to you, your family or your freedoms? The things that are targeted by the left are the first 4 amendments, and so embarrassingly, I had to look them up, but here's what they are. The First Amendment is freedom of speech and religion, of press, of assembly, and the right to petition the government. Number 2 is to keep and bear arms. Number 3 restricts quartering in private homes. Number 4 prohibits unreasonable search and seizure. So those are targeted, okay? Those are intended to go away. So we have to fully grasp what it means to leave quietly. We must see it in all its subtle and lethal forms. We have to be blasted free of the gravitational pull of our depraved culture and the lukewarm church, of which we are, okay? It's not a bad habit that we work on, it's a beast that has to be killed. So the last line of this intro is bring the fire to the book. Don't expect this book to light a fire in you. Bring the fire to the book. Bring the fire that God places in us to the battle that's before us, because if the church continues to be quiet, there won't be an America that we know, okay? There just won't be. Martin Luther said, "I never work better than when I'm inspired by anger. When I'm angry, I can write, pray, and preach well, for then my whole temperament is quickened, and my understanding sharpened, and all mundane vexations and temptations depart." So it's a stretch for me to sit here and tell you to be angry, right? I spend my whole life trying not to be angry. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. But here's what he says. The right kind of anger is a very good thing. Mental health experts, and I'm not going to give you their names because I can't pronounce them, they say anger is best viewed as a tool that helps us read and respond to upsetting social situations. Research overwhelmingly indicates that feeling angry increases optimism, creativity, effective performance, and research suggests that expressing anger can lead to more successful negotiations in life or on the job. Even Paul the Apostle said, "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil." The right kind of anger is crucial in this hour. Altruism, or working for the benefit of the good of the group instead of yourself, is often born from anger. When it comes to mobilizing other people and creating support for a cause, no emotion is stronger. It's a mistake to presume that kindness, compassion, love, and fairness line up on one side of a continuum, and anger and rage and dislike on the other. Positivity alone is insufficient to the task of helping us navigate social interactions and relationships. A healthy society is not an anger-free society, and neither is a healthy church. So I'm going to recount a story that he gives in this book. I Googled it, and it's fact. It's not hard to find at all. I found it in the space of a minute. And this is meant to incite your anger. It's meant to give a clue of things we don't see in our small town. How degenerate our society has become, and what has become a crime that's undefendable or unprosecutable. So anyway, a 14-year-old boy tells his school he is a girl. He wins permission to use the girl's bathroom, then proceeds to enter the girl's bathroom, and there he rapes a young girl. The girl's father went to the school and reported the rape. They insisted they would take care of the investigation and told him not to tell the police. When they did nothing about the rape, he went to the school board meeting and tried to confront them. They cut him off from speaking and lied, saying there was no report of a rape. The father exploded in rage, and the board had him arrested. After he was arrested, leftists flooded social media with hate messages against the entire family, called him a right-wing bigot. The family actually went into hiding. And there's more. Because the rapist was a trans student, woke officials quietly sent him to another school. They did not inform the new school the boy was a rapist. Once there, he raped another young girl. This is the spirit that currently controls our educational system. Not okay. Not okay at all. So if we go back to the quote from the two guys, whose name we're going to skip again, when it comes to mobilizing other people and creating support for a cause, no emotion other than anger is stronger. And so in the Bible, 1 Samuel 11, a gangster terrorist, Nahash the Ammonite, overwhelmed the vulnerable Jewish outpost of Jabesh-Gilead, and the villagers had no choice but to surrender. Nahash was so vile that even after the people offered themselves to him as slaves, he wasn't satisfied. He said he would let them live, but only if he could put out their right eyes. He said he wanted to shame Israel. He was spoiling for a fight. What we need to see is that the left is also spoiling for a fight, for a shot at Christianity. In Samuel 11, verse 3, this is verse 3, then the elders of Jabesh said to him, hold off for 7 days, they're talking to Nahash, that we may send messengers to all the territory of Israel, and then if there's no one to save us, we'll come out to you. And so here's what happened. The messengers came to Gibeah of Saul and told the news in the hearing of the people. All the people lifted up their voices and wept. Now there was Saul coming from behind the herd from the field, and Saul said, what troubles the people that they weep? And they told him the words of the men of Jabesh. Then the Spirit of God came upon Saul when he heard this news, and his anger was greatly aroused. He took a yoke of oxen and cut them in pieces, sent them throughout all the territory of Israel by the hands of messengers, saying, whoever does not go out with Saul and Samuel to battle, so it shall be done to his oxen. So here's what we take from these verses. The anger came from the Holy Spirit. Saul's act of sacrifice galvanized a nation. Verse 7 says, and the fear of the Lord fell on the people, and they came out with one consent. Suddenly there were 330,000 soldiers who were ready to fight for Israel. Nahash and his hordes were annihilated, and Jabesh-Gilead was saved. So in light of that story, what we need to hear is that we, as a church, the American church, needs to mobilize. Righteous indignation is the key. It starts here and now. A volcanic passion must burn within us, a fire that burns away the trivial distractions and hesitation, a flame that vaporizes excuses and fear and gives way to a blazing clarity of purpose. Excuse me. It's never timely to have a runny nose. So back to Martin Luther's quote, I never work better than when I am inspired by anger. When I am angry, I can write, pray, and preach well. For then my whole temperament is quickened and my understanding sharpened, and all mundane vexations and temptations depart. So if you're a person who prays, you've probably experienced that. I personally think that probably my most effective prayers are when I am so mad at Satan and I've had a gutful. When I am done and I'm putting him in his place. And we as children of God, that is our right, that is our duty, that is what Jesus bought for us by shedding his blood, by choosing to come into the hell that we live in and create a means for us to do that. So I guess all that to make a case for anger. There's a place for anger. And so the next story that I want to talk about is Esther. You guys are probably familiar with Esther. Jewish girl raised by an adoptive father who was also a Jew. The current queen, Vashti, was displaced because she disobeyed the king, so he dethroned her. They sent out for all the beautiful virgins in the country and brought them in and pampered them for a year before they went before the king. So Esther was chosen out of that lot. As a Jew, having been told, you're not to speak that you're a Jew, keep that quiet, just go in there and make the king happy. Do what you're told to do, basically. So she's living her life, and sounds like a pretty good life. Haman is another big player in the story. So Mordecai is the uncle. Mordecai goes to the palace gate and kind of hangs out there to just catch wind of what's going on with Esther, to keep in touch with what's going on. While he's there, he overhears a plot to kill the king. So he has the eunuch go and bring Esther down, tells her this plot. She goes, tells the king, gives all the credit to Mordecai. All of this is written in their history book. So, I'm getting confused in my story. So at the point that Esther is called into the king, Mordecai tells her, okay, I found myself. So the eunuch brings Esther out, and Mordecai tells her, you are born for this. This is why you're in this position. You have the power and the position to speak for your people. She kind of tries to talk him out of it, tries to give him clean clothes and clean up and wipe the ashes off, and he won't have any of it. So she asks all the Jews to fast and pray with her for 3 days, and then she agrees to go before the king. And the king has the right to kill you right then and there if he doesn't want to see you, or he can extend his golden scepter and hear what you have to say. So she goes in after 3 days of fasting and praying. He extends his scepter and says, what do you want? Or, it wasn't that clean, but ask for what is your request up to half of the kingdom, and it's yours. And she said, I have prepared a feast. I want you and Haman to come to the feast. So they go to the feast, and he asks her again, what's your request? And she said, please, one more time, come to the feast I have prepared for you tomorrow. So they go. That night before the feast, the king can't sleep, so he has someone come and read him the history books. And they read to him the story of Mordecai, that the reason he's alive is because of Mordecai. So he calls Haman in and tricks him, basically, gives him a riddle. What if a person needed to be lifted to honor before the king for what he had done? What would you do? And Haman says what he would do. So the king says, go get Mordecai and do all this for him. And Haman had, in the meantime, erected a 50-foot stake in front of his house, intending Mordecai to be impaled on it. Haman was impaled on it. Esther got what she wanted. Esther gave her request. The Jews were saved. But all that to say, for such a time as this, okay? No doubt Esther, and she proved that she did want to sit back and enjoy her life, Send out the fresh clothes to Mordecai, get over the mourning, look at something else. I don't want to deal with all the ugly that's out there. I just want my life like it is. We could say the same thing to ourselves. But there are so many things that have come across my attention recently. I can't ignore what's going on in our nation. As a Christian, I can't ignore it, and even if I wasn't a Christian, let me tell you what, I'd probably be digging a cave in the mountains and planting a garden or something stupid, I don't know, but you can't ignore what's going on nowadays. You really can't, unless you totally are burying your head. So the prime message from Esther is that if you remain silent, do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, liberation and rescue will arise for the Jews from another place. You and your father's house will perish, since you did not help when you had the chance. And who knows whether you have attained royalty for such a time as this and for this very purpose. So if you remain silent at this time, liberation and rescue will arise for the Jews from another place. You and your father's house will perish, since you did not help when you had the chance. So in the midst of preparing to talk tonight, I guess probably the most accurate way to say it is I was whining to God about a situation in my life, and he said to me, why is that more important? And it was about a person, okay? So why are your hurt feelings more important than their eternity? And if that doesn't stop you in your tracks, nothing will. But as I was trying to pull all this together and make something cohesive out of it, it's the same thing regarding a political group or an institution or the person sitting next to you. Why are my hurt feelings about what Democrats are doing? Why does that give me the right to sit back and not address it the way God says to address it? We are to take ground. Jesus didn't die and give us authority for us to think about it. He didn't give it to us to hold to ourselves. And so the challenge tonight is to examine where you are in that. If you have hurt feelings, give them to God. That's real easy to say. I talked about this a little bit last time I was up here, but, I grew up in a home where if you had hurt feelings, you better just shut up and figure it out, So for me, to be able to talk to God about something like that has been a long journey to get there. But I'm pretty comfortable doing that now. And God is never not kind. He is never not so kind. Big Daddy Weave has a song that says, "It's the kindness of Jesus that draws me in." So whatever your stumbling block is, take it to the foot of the cross and let God get you past it. You've probably all heard the quote that says, "Evil is powerless if the good are unafraid." And we truly have no reason to be afraid. God already won the victory. He's already established who's going to win. And if we don't want to sit back and let the left win, we better start acting like it. It's your job and it's my job. Mike, do you have the video? Okay, and so the team can come up.